Hello and welcome back to another edition of Phil's Monday Movie Review. I'm glad to be here and I'm glad that you're here. And before we get started on this week's movie review, I just want to take a minute and to give a shout out and say thank you to everyone who tuned in to last week's Phil's Monday Movie Review for RRR. Look, this is a small channel, and yes, I have plans to grow it, but last week's movie review for RRR is the most watched video on my channel yet, and that's really awesome. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched, liked the video, and subscribed, and engaged in the comment section. And yes, I will watch more films by S.S. Rajamouli. RRR was my introduction to Indian cinema, and if you're telling me that there are more films out there with the same amount of heart and soul as RRR, then sign me up. Once again, thank you. Now, on to my recommendation for this week, which is none other than Goodfellas. I know I'd go from rags to riches. Released in 1990, which, by the way, Goodfellas recently turned 32 years old, so I thought it would be appropriate to revisit this classic. Also directed by the great Martin Scorsese, Goodfellas is based on a true story, and it tells the tale about Henry Hill, a man who is heavily affiliated with the mafia from the years 1955 all the way to the year 1980. And within the 3 decades Henry is involved with the mob, we see everything from the rise to the fall of his affiliation with the New York City Italian-American criminal life. The movie poster for Goodfellas simply explains the story as it just says, 3 decades of life in the mafia. We follow Henry as he gets acquainted with Jimmy and Tommy as this trio go about their lives engaging in criminal activities such as illegal gambling, robberies, money extortion, etc. They earn their livings by taking care of one another and becoming business associates in the criminal mafia underworld. As I get older, I learned that most of society has either watched or heard of Goodfellas. It's very neat to see that the older I get, the more of a genuine and well-known classic Goodfellas becomes. And throughout the years, it's really nice to see that this film has earned its spot to be known as an American classic. I don't necessarily think you need to know who Martin Scorsese is in order to know about Goodfellas. I feel like almost everyone knows about this film. Also, I feel like this is one of those films that almost everyone seems to enjoy. And that is very awesome. So you could be like me, a person who has seen Goodfellas so many times that you know it like the back of your hand, or you could be a person who has never seen it but has heard of it, or you could be that rare case who hasn't even seen or even heard of Goodfellas. Regardless of where you stand on Goodfellas, this is a film I always recommend to someone who doesn't really watch a whole lot of movies or someone who is not experienced with watching older films. I've mentioned Martin Scorsese, who we will get to in a little while, but first, I want to talk about the cast of Goodfellas. Henry Hill is played brilliantly by the late Ray Liotta, and he does some of the best I've seen when it comes to taking on a character who is charming, innocent, cruel, sleazy, and most importantly, tragic. We first watch Ray Liotta as this fresh and up-and-coming mobster who just oozes of charisma and life. Then later he transitions into a paranoid, awful, disastrous loner filled with anxiety and emotional misery. Seriously, Ray Liotta is incredible in this film. Rest in peace. We also meet Jimmy Conway, played by Robert De Niro. Aside from being a close friend to Henry Hill, Jimmy also acts as a mentor to Henry, and De Niro does a great job portraying that on screen. Robert De Niro kind of feels like he would be the oldest brother out of these 3 gangsters. He's wise, logical, calm, and cool. Very, very cool. Like, this is probably the coolest I've ever seen anyone smoke a cigarette on film. Then we meet Tommy DeVito, played by the amazing Joe Pesci. When I think of the word wise guy, I always think of Tommy from Goodfellas. To me, Tommy is the wild card of these 3 mobsters. He's obnoxious, distasteful, foul, violent, but he's great to be around with at a party. Just be sure not to piss him off because, yeah. But I will say this about Tommy, though. He's actually a very funny guy.
Funny how?
Other supporting characters in Goodfellas is Karen Hill, played by Lorraine Bracco. And I love Karen so much in Goodfellas because you see this innocent woman falling for the glamorous lifestyle that Henry had, and now she has to adapt to being married to a mobster. Lorraine Bracco, who also plays Dr. Melfi in The Sopranos. Shout out to all my fellow Sopranos fans out there. She is fantastic here in Goodfellas. I feel like she was perfectly casted as Karen Hill. The late Paul Sorvino plays Paulie Cicero, and he was also incredible in Goodfellas. Sorvino plays the local capo of Jimmy, Tommy, and Henry. His screen presence is demanding, intimidating, but at the same time very warm. He comes off as the wisest of the bunch who guides and welcomes Henry into a successful life in the mafia, even though Henry disobeys him about the expansion of his cocaine business, but whatever. The rest of the supporting cast includes Frank Severo as Frankie Carbone, Mike Starr, Frank Vincent as Billy Batts, Debbie Mazar, Michael Imperioli as Spider, and Samuel L. Jackson as Stax Edwards. I mentioned The Sopranos. Recently, I discovered that this man in the background is none other than the late Tony Sirico, who plays Paulie Walnuts. Rest in peace. That takes care of the cast of Goodfellas. Guys, it's time to talk about Martin Scorsese. I'm a big Scorsese fan. I love all of his films. I'm even subscribed to his masterclass, which is there's a lot of good stuff in there for any aspiring filmmakers out there. I highly recommend it. When I talk to other fans of Scorsese, Goodfellas is usually the film that gets brought up the most. You can tell by just watching the film that Scorsese really poured his heart into every frame in the picture. From the soundtrack all the way to the cinematography, Martin Scorsese crafted this exquisite crime drama with a punk attitude. I mentioned cinematography. Now, personally, I love when a movie has long tracking shots. It's when one single camera follows a character or characters for one long continuous take without cutting to a different angle or setting. And of course, I'm talking about the long tracking shot when Henry takes Karen into the Copacabana nightclub through the back entrance. The camera does not stop rolling, and this shot goes for a total of 3 minutes, and they shot that scene a total of 8 times. Insane. What I love what Martin Scorsese did in Goodfellas was his use of improv. The actors in Goodfellas were allowed to pretty much improvise a lot of their dialogue. In an interview, Joe Pesci stated that Scorsese allowed him and the rest of the cast to pretty much do what they wanted. One great example is the funny house scene. That brilliant scene was completely improvised, which is nuts. It was based off a real-life situation that happened to Joe Pesci. Guys, I can talk about Goodfellas all day, but I'm trying to keep this video under 10 minutes. Bottom line is, you don't need me to tell you that Goodfellas rules. The world building that Scorsese planted in this film is immaculate, and the performances by the cast are top tier. It's got plenty of drama and humor, but aside from all that, Goodfellas has some incredible and memorable dialogue with so many memorable quotes. And speaking of memorable quotes, let's go through some of those memorable quotes. Yeah? As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut. I make you laugh. I'm here to fucking amuse you. What do you mean funny? Funny how? How am I funny? All right, here's one of my favorite ones right here. Now go home and get your fucking shine box. All right. Here's another good one right here. Medium rare, an aristocrat. All right, this one I kind of have to clear my throat a little bit because is this the superintendent? Yes, sir. I would like you to know that you have a whore living in 2R. He's my husband. Get your own goddamn man. I'm having a good time here. To many, Goodfellas is arguably the definitive gangster film with so much rewatchability. It's a timeless American classic with so much heart and attitude, and with a top-tier cast being directed by one of the greatest filmmakers to ever walk the earth. Goodfellas is one of those films that can easily hook me and help me escape into the world of these characters with great ease. In other words, Goodfellas is without a doubt cinema. But that is it for Phil's Monday Movie Review. I want to thank you for tuning in. And if you've seen Goodfellas, what is your favorite quote from the movie? Mine is, I'm going to go get the papers. But be sure to tune in next Monday where we talk about another movie. But until then, take care. Thanks for stopping by. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.